At my father-in-law's birthday banquet, my wife's so-called best friend strutted right up to the seat of honor. I quietly grabbed my bowl and headed for the kitchen, completely checked out. But then, the general stepped up and delivered a brutal slap across the guy's face, plunging the entire hall into dead silence. It all started on the night of the general's 61st birthday bash. I showed up at the base banquet hall 2 hours early, meticulously double-checking the menu, the drinks, the projector, the birthday cake, and the seating chart. My wife, Isabella, had made it perfectly clear. My dad has never had a proper birthday celebration in his entire life, she'd said. Put some real effort into it, and don't let my military friends laugh at us. So, I went all out. I booked the best Lakeview private room in the city, set up 18 tables, paid for premium drinks, and dropped a $6,800 deposit. But just 5 minutes before the banquet officially started, Isabella's precious male comrade, Alex, swaggered right in. Without even taking off his coat, he planted himself directly in the seat of honor. In a split second, every single pair of eyes in that private room darted straight to me. My mother-in-law, Margaret, frowned for a split second before her face melted into a warm, welcoming smile. "Oh, Alex is here. Come on in, sit down, make yourself at home. You're always so thoughtful. Tonight, make sure you help Isabella with a few extra toasts." Isabella was already standing right beside Alex, eagerly taking his coat for him. When she finally noticed me standing by the main table, her expression instantly went rigid. She lowered her voice and hissed, "Kane, today is my dad's birthday party. Don't start ruining the mood with that sour look on your face. Alex just got back from a tough overseas deployment. What's the big deal if he sits here?" I just stood there, staring right at her. 5 years of marriage, and for the very first time, she felt like a total stranger to me. I kept my voice flat. "That is the seat of honor," Alex just chuckled, lightly tapping his fingers against the table. "Come on, Kane, aren't you being a little too sensitive? The general isn't even here yet." Me sitting here for a second doesn't mean I'm stealing his thunder. Besides, we're all family here. Why make things so painfully awkward by drawing unnecessary lines? The word family rolled off his tongue with sickening ease, and yet, not a single person in that room found it the least bit inappropriate. Instead, Isabella actually breathed a sigh of relief, like he had just thrown her a lifeline. She tugged impatiently at my sleeve. "See? He didn't mean anything by it. You're the one desperately trying to twist this into some kind of drama." I looked down at her hand, grabbing my shirt. This was the exact same hand that had gripped mine so tightly the day we signed our marriage certificate, promising me, no matter what happens, I will always be on your side. But over the years, that same hand had straightened Alex's tie, handed him glasses of water, snatched my car keys, and constantly brushed aside every single one of my boundaries. "He's just a brother-in-arms, Kane. Stop being so pathetic and petty. A real man would look at the bigger picture." I had been swallowing those exact words for 5 miserable years. I stayed dead silent for 2 seconds, then calmly picked up a bowl from the table. Isabella completely froze. "What the hell are you doing?" I didn't even look at her. "The kitchen is short on bowls. I'll go grab some." My mother-in-law immediately jumped on the chance. "That's right, Kane. Go hurry up with the dishes and stop blocking the doorway. Today is your father-in-law's big night. As the son-in-law, you should at least try to make yourself useful." A few of the soldiers nearby snickered. Isabella sure married well. Kane is basically a human Swiss Army knife, a guy who brings in the cash and plays the perfect servant. Not a bad deal at all. Yeah, just a little socially awkward and spineless, that's all. I turned around with my bowl and barely reached the door when a cold, booming voice shattered the noise. "Who gave him permission to sit there?" The entire room instantly went completely dead silent. I slowly turned back around. My father-in-law, General William Harper, was standing right at the entrance in his immaculate dark grey military uniform. His face was absolute thunder, radiating pure intimidation. Back in his prime, he ran entire military bases, and even in retirement, the man was an absolute wall of iron and discipline. Isabella and I had been married for 5 years now. The general was never exactly warm or fuzzy with me, but he was the only one who never walked all over me either. Whenever I brought expensive gifts for the Harper family, he'd force me to take half of them right back home. He'd always say that Isabella and I needed to build our own lives, and that I shouldn't bleed myself dry just to impress his family. But these days, fewer and fewer people in this toxic household actually bothered to listen to him. Margaret's face drained of color as she quickly rushed forward. "William, honey, Alex just sat down for a quick second. Please don't ruin the mood on your special day." William didn't even acknowledge she was talking. His piercing gaze was locked dead onto Alex. Alex stood up, pasting on that same smug, innocent, nice guy look. "General, happy birthday, sir. I just figured since you hadn't arrived yet, I'd help host the guests on your behalf. Totally innocent, I swear." William began marching over, heavy step by heavy step. Isabella clearly sensed the massive storm brewing and quickly stepped up to shield Alex. "Dad, please. Alex was just trying to help. Don't make a scene, your old squad mates are all watching." William stopped dead in front of the head seat, glaring a hole straight through Alex for 2 agonizing seconds. In the next fraction of a second, he raised his heavy hand. A thunderous slap exploded violently against Alex's smug face. The sickening crack echoed through the entire private room, completely paralyzing every single guest. Alex's head snapped violently to the side, a bright red welt already swelling on his mouth. Isabella shrieked in total panic. "Dad!" My mother-in-law looked like she was about to faint. "William, have you completely lost your damn mind? It's your birthday, for crying out loud. Why would you strike the poor boy?" William just pointed a single shaking finger at the seat of honor, his voice dangerously low, yet every single word cut like a knife. "Look, this is my time's birthday banquet, not your personal stage for throwing a tantrum. Alex, that seat, it is not times yours to take." Alex cupped his cheek, his eyes instantly welling up with fake tears. "General, I really just, William sneered, cutting him off. "Just what? Just using my birthday party to boost your own pathetic ego? Just stepping all over my son-in-law's face, trying to make everyone here think you're practically a son of the Harper family. It's pathetic." At those words, the eyes of all their squad mates finally shifted. Some stared at me, some glared at Isabella, and a few muttered in the background, "Wait, what does that mean?" Isabella's face drained of all color. "Dad, don't be so harsh. Alex and I have been comrades for years. We've been through a lot. He's really not as calculating as you think." William slowly turned to face his daughter. "Oh? Then what about your actual time's husband?" Isabella completely froze. William didn't let up. He paid for this entire banquet. He came here early to set up everything. He confirmed the seating arrangements table by table. He checked the guest list of your comrades one by one. "And what did you do? You let another man take the seat of honor while making your own husband carry dirty bowls to the kitchen." "Isabella, look at me and tell me, who exactly is your husband?" The entire private room fell dead silent, with only the low hum of the air conditioner breaking the tension. I just stood there at the door, still holding a soup bowl, suddenly finding this whole twisted situation ridiculously absurd. That absolute smackdown wasn't delivered by my wife defending me. It came from my father-in-law. Isabella's eyes instantly flashed red with embarrassment. She glared at me, as if it was somehow my time's fault for not rescuing her from this mess. "Kane, say something," she hissed. I looked right back at her, deadpan. "Say what exactly?" She bit her lip nervously. "You know my dad has a crazy quick temper. Can't you just step in and smooth things over for me?" With so many of our squad mates here today, Alex just got completely humiliated. How is he supposed to face anyone after this? I honestly almost laughed out loud. She was actually worried about how Alex would face people from now on, but she never once cared about how I was supposed to hold my head up high in front of the Harper family's guests after being banished to the kitchen like the hired help. I calmly walked over and put the bowl back down on the table. I took a folded receipt from my pocket and slapped it right in the center of the main table. The banquet deposit was $6,800. The remaining balance is $11,300. and the drinks are estimated at around $4,200. Don't worry, I am covering absolutely all of today's expenses. Then I pulled out my car keys and dropped them heavily right next to the bill. This car? I made the down payment on it before we even got married, and I paid off the entire loan myself. Alex has been joyriding in it for 3 months now. After tonight, I am taking it back. It's mine, finally. I locked eyes with Isabella. And once this birthday banquet wraps up, we are going to talk about a divorce. The private room instantly erupted into absolute chaos. My mother-in-law shrieked at the top of her lungs, "Kane, what on earth do you mean by this? Today is your father's birthday banquet. Who are you trying to scare with this ridiculous talk of divorce?" Isabella stared at me in utter disbelief, her jaw practically on the floor. "Over just a timed seat? You want to throw away our marriage over a seat?" I slowly nodded. "No, Isabella. It is not because of a seat." My voice was terrifyingly calm. "It's because I have finally realized that in this entire family, I don't even have a place at all." And with that mic drop, I turned on my heel and walked straight toward the exit. But as I passed by Alex, he suddenly leaned in, lowering his voice so only I could hear the venom. "Kane, who exactly are you trying to fool with this high and mighty act? Isabella is never going to divorce you. She can't live without times me, but she also can't bear to give up times your times money. You'll throw a little tantrum for a couple of days at most, and in the end, you will come crawling right back to clean up our mess." My footsteps instantly halted. My phone's voice memo app had been quietly recording in my pocket for 17 minutes straight. I didn't even bother turning around, I just said flatly, "Then let's see who gets the last laugh this time." I didn't actually leave the banquet hall right away. After stepping out of the room, I ducked into the busy corridor near the kitchen. There was a temporary serving cart set up, and waiters were rushing back and forth carrying out dishes. Amidst the chaos, no one even noticed I was there. I leaned back against the cool wall, pulled out my phone, and replayed the audio I had just recorded. Alex's smug voice came through crystal clear. "Isabella won't divorce you, she can't leave me, and she can't bear to give up your money." Those few sentences weren't long, but man, they were sharp as a knife. But that was enough ammo for me. I immediately saved a backup of the recording to the cloud and checked the photo I snapped of the receipt from the head table just to be safe. Once everything was backed up and secured, I looked down and realized something crazy. My hands were perfectly, terrifyingly steady. 5 years ago, the very first time I ever had a blowout argument with Isabella over Alex, my hands were trembling so badly I couldn't even hold a glass of water. That horrible day was supposed to be our first wedding anniversary. I had excitedly booked a table at a fancy restaurant way in advance to celebrate. But Isabella texted me at the absolute last minute, saying Alex was totally heartbroken over a bad breakup and was moping alone by the military base seaside in the freezing wind. She claimed she was just so worried and absolutely had to go check on him. I begged her not to go, reminding her that today was our milestone anniversary. She brushed it off, saying anniversaries come around every single year, but a person only gets one chance to truly give up on life. Terrified she was right, I chased her all the way to the seaside, only to find Alex comfortably resting his head on her shoulder, his eyes red from crying. When she finally looked up and saw me standing there, her first words weren't an apology, or even an explanation. It was a cold, hard accusation. "Kane, are you seriously stalking me right now?" After that devastating night, similar boundary crossing incidents just kept piling up, year after year. Alex had a minor stomachache. She would take my car in the dead of night to rush him to the ER. Alex failed at his stupid business venture. She secretly transferred thousands of dollars from our joint savings account to bail him out. Alex complained that his dorms on base weren't secure enough for his precious stuff. She let him basically move half his belongings right into the spare storage room of our marital home. And every single time I expressed even a hint of discomfort, she would gaslight me, sighing and saying I was just overthinking everything. Why are you, a grown-ass man, always picking on a fellow vet? The guy has absolutely zero family. If I don't step up to help him, who the hell will? Oh, don't worry, I know my limits. Honestly, I figured her so-called limits meant she at least wouldn't let him sit at the head table, at her own father's birthday bash. Turns out, I still gave her way too much credit. Heavy footsteps suddenly echoed from the end of the hall. Isabella came chasing after me, her face completely flushed with anger and fake victimhood. "Kane, haven't you caused enough drama?" I just stared at her. "I caused drama?" She dropped her voice to a furious hiss. "Do you have any idea how humiliated Alex was just now after my dad slapped him?" He came out of the goodness of his heart to celebrate the birthday and ended up getting laughed out of the room by his old squad mates. Even if you hate his guts, you don't kick a guy when he's down. I looked dead into her eyes and dropped the question. "And what about me?" Isabella flinched, totally caught off guard. "What do you mean, what about you? When I was shoved off to eat in the kitchen, did you ever stop to think if I was humiliated?" She scowled. "What do you mean, shoved into the kitchen? You literally said you wanted to go because you told me not to make a scene. You shouldn't have made a scene in the first damn place." She finally snapped, her voice practically echoing off the walls. "It was just a stupid chair, and you had to turn it into a massive spectacle. Today is my dad's birthday. It's not the time or place for your ego trip." I let out a dry, sarcastic laugh. "So my dignity means absolutely nothing to you." She pressed her lips together, her tone softening just a fraction. "That is not what I meant, Kane. We've been married for 5 years now. You know how I am. I just hate making the crew feel awkward. Alex has had a really rough few years, okay? Why do you always have to push him to the edge? Did I push him into taking the seat of honor?" She choked on her words, but I wasn't done. "Did I force him to drive my car? Force him to blow through our cash? Force him to move all his crap into our home? Or better yet, did I force him to say that you can't leave him, but you can't bear to part with my money?" Isabella's face turned completely white. "What the hell are you talking about?" I shoved my phone screen right in her face. The audio recording progress bar was paused, dead at the last 10 seconds. Alex's smug voice rang out crystal clear from the speaker. "You can't leave me, but you can't bear to part with his money." Isabella's whole expression shattered piece by piece. She lunged, desperately trying to snatch my phone. "He's just talking garbage. Don't take it out of context." I stepped back, dodging her grab. "Out of context? Oh, cool. Then how about I drop the first 17 minutes into the family group chat and we can all have a listening party?" Pure panic flashed in her eyes, instantly morphing into blind rage. "Kane, when did you become such a monster? You actually secretly recorded a private conversation between husband and wife." Right about the time I realized 180,000 was mysteriously sucked dry from our joint account, Isabella went dead still. I burned a hole right through her with my stare. 3 days before the birthday bash, the card ending in 7261 wired 180,000 to Alex. The note? Consulting fee. Tell me, Isabella, what kind of magical consulting fee costs 180,000? Her lips trembled. His studio was drowning. He had major cash flow issues. I was just fronting him a loan from our joint account. That account has my money in it too. I kept glaring at her, completely unfazed. Yeah, it also holds this month's mortgage, my mum's post-surgery checkup fees, and the absolute final payment for your dad's little birthday party. You took our life savings and handed it to a guy who stole your father's seat of honor, joyrode in my car, and openly humiliated me. And you have the nerve to tell me it's your money too. Isabella's face drained of all color, her voice shrinking to a whisper. I'll make him pay it all back. I just nodded. Fine. She actually thought I was caving and opened her mouth to speak. Instead, I dialed the bank's hotline right to her face. Yeah, hi. I need to instantly suspend all online transfers for the account ending in 7261. Also, pull the full transaction history for the past 2 years. Isabella's head snapped up. Kane, no! I didn't even look at her. And one more thing. Report the backup card ending in 0927 as stolen and freeze the credit limit immediately. She lunged at me, clawing at my arm. Are you out of your damn mind? That's my backup card. The rep on the line was calmly verifying my security details. I coldly rattled off the rest of the info and hung up the phone. Isabella's eyes were bloodshot not from crying but from absolute fury. This is pure financial abuse, Kane. I never thought you'd stoop this freaking low. I shot her a look colder than ice. Oh, but blowing your husband's hard-earned cash to play sugar mama to your army buddy, that's not low at all. She swung hard to slap me, but halfway through the air, a hand caught her wrist. William was standing right at the corner of the hall. His face looked even more thunderous than it did back in the private room. Isabella. Her dad's voice was absolute frost. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough for one night? Isabella clung to his arm like a drowning rat. Dad, did you hear him? He froze my damn card. He's gunning for a divorce and digging through our bank records. William just stared down at her, his eyes heavy with utter disappointment. Good. He should. Margaret came sprinting out of the room, and hearing this, she went into a total panic. William, are you losing your mind? What kind of nonsense is that? That's their money as a married couple. What do you mean he should? What's wrong with Isabella floating a little cash to her old buddy from the service? William spun around, absolutely snapping. 18,000 is a little. Margaret choked on her own words, then immediately went back to throwing a massive tantrum. That's just Isabella being a total sweetheart. Besides, Alex is definitely going to pay her back. Is Kane seriously throwing a tantrum over something so petty? Right then, I realized that standing around listening to this garbage was a total waste of my time. I snatched up my coat and brushed right past them, heading straight for the elevator. Isabella screamed at my back, Kane, if you walk out that door today, don't even think about crawling back. The metal doors chimed open. I stepped inside and locked eyes with her. Fine by me. I'm sick of coming back to a house where just anybody can waltz right in anyway. Just before the doors slowly slid shut, I caught it real, genuine panic flashing across Isabella's face for the very first time. Too bad for her. It was way too late. The second the elevator hit the lobby, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A temporary bank statement had just dropped. Over the last 2 years, Isabella hadn't just handed Alex $180,000. Try $736,400. Sitting alone in my car outside the hotel, I just stared at that massive number. Strangely, I didn't feel a single ounce of anger. All I felt was a chilling, absolute clarity. 736,400. And get this, that didn't even include the cold, hard cash she'd pulled out, the reckless swiping on my supplementary card, or the gas, toll fees, and maintenance for my own car. I snapped a screenshot of the statement and fired it off to my lawyer buddy, James Carter. We go way back friends for 10 solid years. Back when I was at rock bottom in my career, he was the guy who meticulously combed through my very first employment contract. He eventually moved into family law and civil disputes. He always used to say, money is easy to divide. It's the human heart that's the absolute worst to sort out. His reply popped up instantly. Save all the original transaction records. Don't just rely on screenshots, man. Get your butt down to my office first thing tomorrow morning. Bring the premarital property deed, the car purchase agreement, joint account logs, and every single transfer receipt. I typed back, divorce. I'm getting every penny back. He shot back with a blunt 4-word text. Do not go soft. I stared at that message for a long, quiet moment, then cranked the engine and drove straight to the home we shared. Our place was in the old northern district of the city. It was a cozy 3-bedroom apartment I'd bought entirely on my own before we even tied the knot. Back then, the housing market hadn't exploded yet. I had dumped 8 years of my hard-earned savings into that place, designing and renovating every single inch of it myself. I still remember Isabella standing by the floor-to-ceiling window the first time she saw it, sighing, Kane, this is going to be our forever home. Like an absolute idiot, I completely believed her. So, when she said she wanted to gut my storage room to build a piano room right after the wedding, I nodded. When she claimed her mum had a bad back and needed a brand new mattress in the guest room, I replaced it without a second thought. When she whined that Alex had nowhere to put his stuff and begged for just a tiny corner of the storage room, my gut screamed no. But I caved anyway. But that tiny corner kept growing like a tumor, spreading from 2 dusty cardboard boxes to an entire row of tall storage cabinets, and eventually mutating into a makeshift workspace Alex could use whenever he damn well pleased. When I finally pulled up to the apartment, the smart lock was already disengaged, the lights were blazing, and a pair of dirty men's combat boots was kicked off right by the front door. They definitely weren't mine. I froze in the entryway for a few seconds, then simply walked right in. Some answers didn't need investigating anyway. The living room was completely empty, but I could hear muffled voices drifting in from the balcony. I quietly walked over. There was Alex, leaning casually against my balcony railing with a phone pressed to his ear. He still had a bright red handprint stamped across his face from the brutal slap the general had given him earlier. "Oh, don't worry about it. Isabella will smooth things over. Kane's just a guy who barks loud but bites soft. Just scare him a little, and he'll come crawling back." Whatever the person on the other end said next made him burst into an ugly, arrogant snicker. Come on, they've been married and living in this place for 5 whole years. You really think things are going to change overnight? Besides, even if Isabella actually pulls the trigger on a divorce, doesn't that loser have to give her half the house? I spoke up right behind him. Now, who on earth told you that garbage? Alex whipped around so fast he nearly dropped his phone over the edge. Pure shock crossed his face before he quickly plastered on a fake smug calm. "Oh, you're back. Perfect timing, buddy. I've still got a few things left to pack up." I just stared past him, looking straight toward the storage room. The door was cracked open. Inside, it wasn't just dusty cardboard boxes anymore. There was a folding bed, a shaving kit, a pile of his jackets, and even a fresh pair of slippers. I raised an eyebrow. "You've been sleeping here?" Alex just gave a lazy shrug. "Yeah, occasionally. When I'm grinding late on a project, Isabella lets me crash here for the night. We're all friends, right? You're not seriously going to throw a fit over a sleepover, are you?" "Oh, I am absolutely throwing a fit," I replied with a deadpan stare. He just let out a mocking laugh. "Then go cry to Isabella about it. Why the hell are you taking it out on me?" Instead of arguing, I pulled out my phone and snapped a quick, clear photo of his cozy little setup. Alex's smug face instantly darkened. "Kane, back off. Taking pictures of my private space is a straight-up invasion of privacy. This is my damn house." He completely froze. I stepped closer, enunciating every single word so it would sink into his thick skull. "Full down payment before the wedding. Mortgage secured before the wedding. I will gladly settle the post-marriage mortgage payments in court, exactly by the book. But as of right now, I am the sole legal owner of this property. You've been squatting here long-term without my explicit consent, and I have every legal right to demand you pack your trash and get out, immediately." The cocky disguise on Alex's face shattered into pieces. "Who do you think you're scaring, man? Isabella is never going to allow this. Whether she agrees or not has zero impact on me changing my own locks." I dialed the property management office right in front of him and demanded they send up a locksmith. Panicking, Alex lunged forward to snatch my phone out of my hand. I calmly stepped to the side. He went flying past me, completely losing his footing and crashing hard right into the glass coffee table. His expression twisted into something ugly. 10 minutes later, Isabella came rushing back into the house. The second she walked in, she saw me and Alex locked in a tense standoff. Without missing a beat, she stepped right in front of him, shielding him. "Kane, how long are you going to keep this up? Alex got beaten up by my dad tonight, and I just let him come home to cool off. What is the big deal?" I just stood there, staring coldly at her. "Is this our home or your home?" She frowned, looking annoyed. "Don't talk like that. Answer me." Isabella pursed her lips, hesitating. "Of course it is our home. Then why didn't I know he had slippers, a toiletry bag, and a folding bed stashed here?" Her eyes immediately darted away, avoiding mine. "Sometimes he works late. Works late enough to sleep in someone else's marital home." She snapped back in defensive anger. "Kane, can't you keep your mind out of the gutter for once?" Alex knows his limits. Without a word, I opened my phone and pulled up a screenshot from the building's security cameras. On the 3rd of last month, at 11:40 p.m., he came in. He didn't leave until 7:20 a.m. the next morning. You were out of town for training that day. Isabella's face instantly drained of color. Alex panicked, stammering, I just came over that day to pick up some documents. I was just too tired and dozed off on the couch for a bit. I ignored his pathetic excuse and kept scrolling through the footage. On the 15th of last month, at 1:10 a.m., he came in and left at 9:30 a.m. on the 16th. You told me you were staying at the hospital with your mum that day. Isabella opened her mouth, but no words came out. I locked eyes with her. Did you know he was here? Or didn't you? She completely avoided my gaze. That silence was all the answer I needed. Right on cue, the locksmith arrived. Isabella scrambled to block the door, desperately refusing to let him change the locks. Her voice was trembling with panic. Kane, you can't do this. This is my home too. You can stay, of course, at least until the divorce is finalized. I am not going to illegally kick you out. I shot a glaring look at Alex. But he can't stay. Alex just sneered at me. You really think changing the locks means you have won? What about the car? My stuff is still in it. I calmly pulled the spare key right out of my pocket. Speaking of the car, I checked the GPS tracker on my phone. It is parked outside a bar in the west end of town. That car? I am the buyer, the loan holder, and the insurance policy holder. As of today, neither of you has any right to use it. I have already notified the towing company. If you keep driving it, I will report it as stolen. Isabella finally started to truly panic. I need that car for my daily commute too. How am I supposed to get to work if you take it back? Subway, bus, taxi, I replied flatly, utterly unmoved. Or just have Alex buy you one. She looked at me as if I had just said something completely absurd. But you are my husband. Not for much longer. The entire room fell into a dead silence. Alex looked at Isabella, then back at me, and suddenly let out a mocking laugh. Isabella, do you see this? This is the so-called man you married, threatening you with the house and the car, trying to control you, forcing you to back down like a coward. Isabella's eyes grew red and teary. In the past, that pitiful look would have been more than enough to soften my heart. But tonight, I just snatched the car keys right off the table. Alex, move all your trash out within 3 days, or I will have property management and a lawyer oversee throwing it all away. With that final warning, I turned my back on them and walked straight into the bedroom to gather my crucial documents. The marriage certificate, the property deed, the car purchase contract, the banking USB drive, and the prenuptial agreement. I shoved them all into a secure file folder. Isabella stood frozen at the doorway, watching my every move. She was finally showing a genuine hint of panic. You are really going through with this divorce? I sharply zipped up the folder. Isabella, I am not arguing with you. I looked her dead in the eye. I am telling you, I am done. I'm leaving at 7. By the next morning, the Harper family group chat had absolutely exploded. My mother-in-law, Margaret, was the very first one to launch an attack. Kane, you are so incredibly heartless. Last night at old William's birthday party, you made a massive scene in public and made my poor Isabella cry for half the night. No marriage in this world is without its little bumps along the road. Over a simple misunderstanding between friends, you freeze her credit card, change the locks, and demand a divorce. Do you even have a conscience? Soon enough, all the other relatives started chiming in. Kane, you cannot be so petty and calculating in a marriage. A real man should be generous and magnanimous. Isabella is beautiful, and she is such a good daughter. You really should cherish her more. I have met that kid Alex before. He seems perfectly sensible. Not a bad person at all. Young couples argue, sure, but do not bring money into it. It just destroys the relationship. Meanwhile, I was sitting quietly in my law firm's conference room, reading every single ridiculous message. James sat right across from me, sliding a hot cup of coffee over the table. Are you going to reply to that? Yes, I said firmly. He simply raised an eyebrow. Just remember, once you make this public, there is basically no turning back. I gave him a cold smile. I never planned on turning back anyway. First, I sent a picture to the chat. The final payment receipt for my father-in-law's extravagant birthday banquet. Last night's banquet deposit was $6,800. The remaining balance was $11,300 and the drink deposit was $4,200. Every single cent was paid by me. The seating chart, the menu, the gift table, and the projection video were all arranged and paid for by me in advance. The entire group chat went dead silent for over 10 seconds. I did not stop there. I continued posting. The second page was a detailed summary of all my bank transfers to the Harper family over the past 2 years. My mother-in-law's lumbar surgery cost $3,200. My brother-in-law Edward's shop rent was $12,000. My father-in-law's monthly medical checkups and medication came to $4,000. The renovation for the old family house was $21,000. And the holiday gifts and red envelopes, which are not even fully accounted for, totaled $9,800. Grand total? $50,600. Then I dropped the third page. Isabella's hidden transaction records to Alex, a staggering $736,400. I kept my face completely deadpan and typed out a single chilling sentence. Dear family elders, please tell me, who exactly is scheming against who here? The group chat instantly died. My third aunt, the one who had just told me to be the bigger person, was the very first to flip the script. Isabella actually sent all this money to Alex. Another uncle just dropped a confused question mark. Over $700,000, borrowing that much just between old army buddies? My mother-in-law immediately jumped in to do damage control. This is a private issue between husband and wife. Why on earth are you blasting this in the family group? Kane, where are your manners? I just stared at my glowing screen, my fingers totally steady. Last night was a family issue too, wasn't it? You all had no problem judging me in this very chat, so why exactly can't I defend myself here? Margaret snapped back, absolutely furious. What is the big deal with a son-in-law spending a little cash on his wife's family? Isabella married you and threw away 5 years of her youth on you. But before I could even type a reply, William's message popped up. Margaret, shut your mouth. The chat went dead silent all over again. William almost never spoke in the group, and he definitely never used that kind of tone. Half a minute later, my father-in-law dropped another message. Kane, I have never treated you unfairly over all these years. What went down last night was completely Isabella's fault, and the fault of our Harper family. If anyone tries to pull rank on this man again, you deal with me first. I stared at his message, totally unsure of how I was supposed to feel. My father-in-law wasn't a bad guy, but when only one person in a toxic family actually has a working brain, it's never enough to save the whole sinking ship. Isabella's phone call came in hot and fast. I answered it and threw her right on speaker. Kane, why the hell did you post my bank statements in the family chat? Her voice was actually shaking. Do you have any idea how his old army buddies see me now? What about when you let Alex take the seat of honor? Did you even care how they'd look at me? She paused for 2 seconds. That's completely different. I scoffed. How exactly is it different? Her voice dropped to a pathetic whisper. I am your wife. You cannot treat me like this. I didn't miss a beat. It is exactly because you are my wife that I kept my mouth shut and endured this garbage for 5 whole years. I glanced down at the thick stack of legal documents resting on the table. But exactly because you are my wife, you should know better than anyone what that money actually means. You took the money I bled and sweat for, just to support a man who constantly humiliated me, and you expect me to just swallow it with a smile? Isabella, what the hell gives you the right? She started sobbing through the phone. I didn't offer a single word of comfort. He was just really struggling back then. I only wanted to help him out. $730,000. He is going to pay it back. I coldly asked, when? Dead silence. She couldn't even answer. Sitting across the desk from me, my lawyer James silently slid a printed form my way. It was a checklist of materials we needed to prep the case: original bank statements, chat history, audio recordings, vehicle usage logs, property deeds, and a brutally detailed list of our joint debts. Staring at that checklist, it suddenly hit me our entire marriage was as totally absurd as a breached contract just waiting for a trial. Isabella was still whining through the speaker. Kane, please stop messing around, okay? I admit I didn't handle things perfectly last night. Look, I can even make Alex apologize to you. Just unfreeze the bank card and please don't change the smart lock password on the house. Let's just go home and talk this over like adults. I cut her off. Has Alex moved out yet? She hesitated, and I instantly knew the answer. He got hurt last night. I couldn't just leave him all alone. I hung up the phone right in her face. James let out a dark chuckle. Pretty typical, honestly. I looked up. Typical of what? It's not that she doesn't realize you've been wronged, man. She just honestly believes your feelings can be put on hold. That sentence twisted into my chest like a jagged knife. It didn't even hurt that much, honestly, because my heart had gone completely numb a long time ago. Later that afternoon, the towing company finally called me. My car had been found, not parked outside the bar where he left it, but fully impounded by the traffic cops under the West Side overpass. Turns out, Alex had decided to take my car for a joyride while completely hammered, smashed right into a guardrail, and couldn't even produce a single vehicle authorization form. By the time I walked into the traffic police precinct, Isabella was already pacing the floor. She spotted me and immediately rushed over, frantic. Kane, hurry up and tell the officers that you agreed to lend the car to Alex. I stopped dead in my tracks. Alex was slouched in a plastic chair, looking pale as a ghost, but he was still desperately trying to force this arrogant, dignified front. Kane, look, I was in a bad headspace last night and threw back a few drinks. I'll pay for your little car repairs. Just help me get out of this mess first. I just stared him down. And when exactly did I ever agree to let you drive my car? Alex's smug face instantly froze. Isabella started to panic. Kane, do not be so stubborn at a time like this. I completely ignored her. I pulled out my vehicle purchase contract and the spare key, slamming them on the desk for the cops. Officers, this car is registered solely under my name. I never authorized him to drive it. Alex has been illegally using it long term, and the vehicle was previously occupied by him without my consent. I am already having my lawyer draw up the paperwork to handle this theft. Isabella stared at me, her eyes wide with absolute disbelief. Alex finally lost his cool, pure panic setting in. Kane, are you trying to ruin my life? I glared down at his pathetic face. When you were sitting in my driver's seat, weren't you acting exactly like one of the almighty Harpers? I just turned my back on him, signed the impound release papers, and coordinated to get my car back. Behind me, Isabella's voice broke, thick with fake tears. Kane, how did you turn into someone so cold? I didn't even bother looking back. The truth is, I hadn't changed at all. I had just finally stopped pretending to be blind to their endless disrespect. 3 days after that chaotic birthday banquet, my father-in-law ended up hospitalized. William's blood pressure had always been a ticking time bomb. Furious and emotionally drained, I headed home that night, only to get dragged into a screaming match with Margaret and Isabella until dawn. The very next morning, my father-in-law, William, got dizzy and was rushed straight to the hospital. The text came from William himself. Kane, you really don't need to come. It's honestly nothing serious. Just focus on your own stuff. I stared at the message, but I still went. Not for Isabella, and definitely not for my toxic in-laws. I went because that slap William gave Alex had finally voiced the massive grievances I had choked down for 5 miserable years. I couldn't just toss away basic human decency over a messy divorce. So I picked up some fresh fruit and some braised duck on the way. But the second I reached the hospital room door, I heard Margaret's shrill, screeching voice inside. Are you satisfied now? The entire birthday banquet turned into a total joke. Your son-in-law wants a divorce. Every single one of your old army buddies is watching our family make a complete fool of itself. Did that slap of yours actually hit Alex? No, you slapped Isabella right in the face. William's voice sounded incredibly weary. He literally handed his own face out to be stepped on. How on earth did Alex step on his face? Margaret snapped back. That poor guy has been kind enough to keep Isabella company all these years. But now, Kane has finally shown his true colors. He cut off her credit cards, took back the car, refused to let them stay in the house, and you are still defending him. All of that was Kane's to begin with, William sighed. What do you mean his? They have been married for 5 whole years. Isn't it supposed to be joint property? William coughed weakly a few times before his voice turned ice cold. Margaret, if you keep this up, Isabella's divorce is absolutely guaranteed. Outside, I gently knocked on the door. The hospital room instantly fell dead silent. Isabella opened the door. When she saw me, her eyes lit up for a second before growing dark and complicated, clearly remembering the mess of the past few days. You're here, she whispered. I just handed her the groceries. I'm here to see Dad. Hearing me still call him that, her eyes instantly welled up with tears. Kane, she trailed off. I completely ignored her and walked right past to the bedside. William looked up at me. Didn't I tell you, you didn't need to come? I placed the soy-glazed duck down on the nightstand. It was on the way, I replied calmly. He stared at me in heavy silence for a few seconds. This kid, stubborn as ever, Margaret aggressively scoffed from the corner. Well, it's a good thing you're actually here, because there are a few things we seriously need to clear up right now. Kane, Isabella hasn't been eating or sleeping well at all these past few days. Don't push things too far. You know there is no such thing as an overnight feud between a husband and wife. Restore the credit card immediately. Give Isabella the new house password and go sort out that messy car situation with the traffic police. And as for Alex, he has already been through enough bad luck, so just stop hounding the poor guy. I slowly turned my head and looked right at Isabella. She just lowered her head, not saying a single word to defend me. Is this really your intention too? I asked coldly. She mumbled quietly. Alex, he just can't have a criminal record. He still needs to keep his job at the base. I just nodded, feeling a bitter sting. Right. And what about me? She looked up, fresh tears glistening in her eyes. Kane, we are literally husband and wife. Why do you constantly have to compare yourself to Alex? I just let out a dark, cynical smile. Suddenly, a sickeningly gentle voice came from the doorway. Isabella, please, don't say that. Kane is only going to misunderstand me even more. Alex limped in, holding a pathetic bouquet of flowers, a cheesy band-aid still plastered across his face. Wearing a light-colored coat, he played the part perfectly, looking totally haggard, yet completely harmless. Margaret immediately rushed over, oozing with concern. Oh, Alex, why are you here too? Does your poor face still hurt? Alex meekly shook his head. Aunt Margaret, I'm really fine. I was just so worried about the general. William's face instantly darkened like a thundercloud. Who the hell told you to come? Alex paused mid-step, flashing a perfectly calculated, bitter smile. General, I know you are still incredibly angry with me. I was totally out of line that day. I admit it. I came here today to personally apologize to both you and Kane. He then turned toward me and bowed deeply. Kane, I am so sorry. That day, I stupidly sat in the wrong seat and made you misunderstand everything. The whole car incident, that was entirely my fault too, but I swear, I really didn't mean to take advantage of your kindness. If you find me annoying, I will stay completely out of your sight from now on. It's just that. Isabella is too soft-hearted. Please, just don't hurt her because of me. Wow, what an absolutely well-crafted, manipulative little speech. Every single sentence sounded like an ginger cava tinger tava tide. Please, don't be like this. Margaret immediately chimed in. Kane, look at him. He has already humbled himself completely. What more could you possibly want? Without a word, I casually pulled out my phone. Well, since you're so genuinely apologizing, let's just make everything crystal clear in front of everyone. I hit play on the recording. Instantly, Alex's smug voice rang out, echoing loudly through the hospital room. Isabella is never going to divorce you. She can't leave me. And she absolutely can't bear to give up your cash. You will make a little fuss for a day or two at most, and in the very end you will come crawling right back to clean up the mess, the color instantly drained from Alex's horrified face. Margaret's mouth snapped shut in stunned silence. Isabella just stared blankly at the phone, looking as if she was truly hearing those disgusting words for the very first time. I stopped the recording, pocketed my phone, and glared straight at Alex. You just said I misunderstood. So, were those words just a little misunderstanding too? Alex's pale lips violently trembled. I had just been beaten up. I was emotional. I was only speaking out of pure anger. Oh really? I snapped. Was stealing my car also out of anger? Was spending the night in my damn wedding room just out of anger? Was Isabella transferring you $730,000 just out of anger? With every furious question I fired off, the air in the room grew completely freezing. Alex finally dropped his pathetic little act, his voice hardening into a nasty sneer. Kane, do you seriously have to push things this far? Isabella helped me because she wanted to. Doesn't she have the absolute right to manage your joint assets? Yes, I replied with a deadpan, chilling smile, which is exactly why I am only recovering what can be lawfully clawed back. Alex's face turned a sickening shade of grey. Right at that tense moment, William, still confined to his hospital bed, suddenly broke the silence. So, what about the cash gifts from the birthday banquet? Everyone whipped their heads around to stare at him. Slowly, William pulled a crumpled, folded piece of paper from under his pillow and shoved it into my hands. Kane read this. I took it, peeling back the folds. It was a photocopy of an IOU. The borrower, Alex. The amount, $26,000, the stated purpose of the loan. Funding William's birthday banquet, plus some so-called upcoming social obligations. But the real kicker was the guarantor's signature line. Isabella's name was written right there in plain ink, her face instantly drained of all color, while Margaret just stood there, completely dumbfounded. What the hell is this? William glared daggers at Alex. Kane paid every single cent for my birthday banquet. You exploited my birthday to squeeze $26,000 out of my old military buddies. Where did that money go? Alex looked like a deer caught in the headlights, totally panicking. Gee, General, wait. There's a huge misunderstanding here. William furiously ripped the medical monitor clip off his finger and fought through the pain to sit upright. A misunderstanding. His eyes were bloodshot with absolute rage. I am 61 years old, and you used me as your personal ATM at my own party. You stepped all over my son-in-law. You manipulated my daughter. You scammed my brothers-in-arms. Tell me, Alex, which part of that is a damn misunderstanding? By this point, the shouting had drawn quite a crowd to the doorway of the hospital ward. Relatives, a few nurses, and even the family of the patient in the next bed were all watching. That smug, decent mask Alex always wore? It completely shattered into a million pieces. Isabella swayed on her feet, looking like she was about to pass out on the spot. She locked eyes with me, desperate, like a drowning woman reaching for a lifeline. Kane, I swear I didn't know about that IOU. I really truly didn't. I just scoffed coldly, slipping the copied IOU back into my manila folder. Whether you knew or not, let the police and the judge figure that out. And with that mic drop, I turned my back and walked right out of the room. Isabella scrambled after me, desperately grabbing my arm out in the hallway. Kane, please, you can't call the cops. If Alex gets a criminal record, his entire life will be over. I slowly looked down at her trembling fingers gripping my sleeve. 5 long years of marriage, and this was the very first time she had ever begged me for anything. But of course, it was to save Alex. I coldly, deliberately pulled my arm out of her grasp. Oh, and what about my 5 years? She instantly froze. I leaned in, my voice like ice. Isabella, you have dragged my dignity through the mud for half a decade. Who exactly is going to pay for my ruined life? Ultimately, William didn't dial 911 right away. It wasn't out of pity, but because he needed to untangle the messy web of debts, this scumbag owed his military buddies first. William was a man of old-school principles and extreme caution. Like he told me, if we're going to strike, We can't just stop at the 26,000. We have to dig up every single dime Alex borrowed, expose whose names he forged, and figure out if Isabella was in on the con. I completely respected his tactical approach, but make no mistake, my own personal revenge tour wasn't slowing down for a second. My buddy James helped me draw up the very first legal strike. The terms were brutal and simple. Point 1. Isabella was banned from touching our joint bank accounts immediately. Point 2. Alex had to cough up the cash for all the repair bills, speeding tickets, and towing fees. Every single cent he racked up while joyriding in my car. Point 3. Alex had exactly 3 days to get his pathetic belongings out of my premarital house. And point 4. Isabella was legally required to cooperate in a full forensic audit of all the sketchy money transfers made during our marriage. The exact day that legal bomb dropped on the Harper family, Margaret stormed over to my marital home with Isabella and her bratty younger brother, Edward, ready to raise hell. I was busy clearing out the storage room. Honestly, that parasite Alex had hoarded way more junk in my house than I ever realized. On top of his tacky clothes, some random paperwork, and a cheap folding bed, I actually uncovered a bunch of shady receipts, a hidden ledger, and a sketchy business agreement for some consulting scam. I was just snapping photos of the evidence and sealing up the boxes when someone started violently hammering on my front door. "Kane, open this damn door!" It was my delightful mother-in-law, Margaret. The second I unlatched it, she shoved her way inside, glaring around my living room like she was the queen of the castle. What is the meaning of this? Did you actually change the digital lock password? Are you seriously trying to kick my daughter out onto the streets? Isabella hovered silently behind her, looking utterly exhausted and haggard. Meanwhile, Edward just rolled his eyes, looking massively annoyed to even be there. "Come on, brother-in-law, drop the act," Edward groaned. "Husbands and wives don't sue each other. Sending legal threats. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that is for us?" I blocked their path, refusing to let them step 1 foot past the entryway. "Spit it out. What do you want?" Margaret totally lost her mind. "This is Isabella's home. How dare you speak to us with that attitude?" I ignored the old bat and locked eyes with my wife. "Is that what you think too?" Isabella nervously chewed her bottom lip. "Kane, we've been married for 5 years. This house, it's always been our shared home." I let out a harsh laugh. "Living here doesn't mean you own it." I spun around, grabbing my manila folder, and whipped out the photocopies of the official property deed, the original purchase contract, and the bulletproof bank records of my pre-marriage mortgage. "I bought this property long before I ever put a ring on your finger. I paid the down payment out of my own pocket, and my name is the only one on this deed. As for the mortgage payments made during our actual marriage, I'll cut you a check for your legal share of those installments, but get this straight, this house does not, and will never, belong to the Harper family." Margaret fiercely snatched the documents from my hand and chucked them onto the floor without a second glance. "Don't you dare try to intimidate me with your stupid legal jargon. Isabella gave you 5 of the best years of her life. She's your wife. She cooked your meals, she cleaned your floors. By all rights, half of this house is hers." I shot a side-eye at Isabella. She looked vaguely embarrassed by her mother's screaming, but she didn't lift a single finger to stop her. I just had to laugh. Cooked and cleaned. For 5 whole years of marriage, I paid for the housekeeper, and I still did most of the cooking. Isabella was always so busy with her job, and I never once complained about doing the heavy lifting around the house. But now that we're splitting our assets, it's suddenly her ultimate bargaining chip. Edward sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Cut the act, brother-in-law. You're just terrified of losing this house in the divorce. A real man would have some class. If you actually loved my sister, you'd hand over the house without a second thought, even after the divorce." I shot him an icy glare. "Next month's rent for your little shop? You're paying it yourself." Edward totally froze. "Wait, what do you mean?" "Exactly what I said," I replied deadpan. "From this exact moment on, I am completely done covering your rent, your utilities, and your inventory costs. Oh, and I am definitely not acting as your loan guarantor anymore." His smug expression vanished instantly. "Then what about my shop? The lease is paid every 6 months. "Your shop, your problem," I fired back. Edward started panicking. But, you swore you'd help me back then. Yeah, I helped my wife's brother. I stared him down. I didn't agree to fund a parasite who drains my wallet and then calls me ungrateful. Margaret rushed over, furiously pointing a finger right in my face. Kane, are you honestly trying to drive our entire family to absolute ruin? I calmly reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Do you need me to call the cops for you? You all just trespassed, destroyed my legal documents, and practically threatened me. And guess what? I've recorded every single second of it. Margaret's hand froze mid-air. Isabella finally broke her silence. Enough, Mom. She looked at me, her voice trembling and hoarse. Kane, do you seriously have to be this cold and calculating? Her eyes welled up with tears. We have been together for 5 years. Is our whole marriage just a pile of money to you now? I looked at her, and honestly, I just found it absolutely laughable. Isabella, the very first person to put a price tag on our feelings. It wasn't me who did that. All the color drained from her face. I kept pushing. When you secretly transferred that first $5,000 to Alex, did you think about our relationship then? When you actually let that guy sleep in our apartment, did you think about our relationship then? When you practically gave him the seat of honor at the table and banished me to the kitchen like the help, did you think about our relationship then? She opened her mouth, but not a single sound came out. Right at that perfectly awful moment, Edward accidentally let it slip. Sis, wait. Didn't you say that the money from the training center could be used to tide Alex over? And that my brother-in-law would literally never find out? Now that he's gone and checked every single receipt, aren't you going to talk your way out of this? The entire living room went dead silent. Isabella spun around, absolutely furious. Shut your mouth. I locked eyes with her. The training institution. That money. Isabella looked like she'd just seen a ghost. Oh, I remember that money from 6 months ago. Isabella had claimed she wanted to partner with a friend to start up a children's art center, and she was short $30,000 in startup funds. Like a fool, I didn't even hesitate. I transferred her the 30 grand right away, smiling as I said, consider it my full support for your new venture. She had hugged me so tight, whispering, Kane, you are just so good to me. Once the business is stable, I'll make sure you get to live an easier life. As it turned out, every cent of that money had also found its way straight into Alex's greedy pockets. I just lowered my head and let out a bitter, echoing laugh. Isabella was totally panicking now. Kane, it is not what you think. The business really did use the money, but Alex had this massive emergency. So I just temporarily moved some of it over to him. I stared coldly. Exactly how much did you move? She refused to answer. Edward finally realized the massive hole he'd just dug and cowered away behind his mom. I pressed record on my phone and demanded again, how much did you move? Isabella's tears freely fell as she choked out, 22,000. I just nodded slowly. Good to know. I immediately saved the audio file, tucking away that little golden nugget along with her earlier confession. Margaret was practically sweating bullets now. Kane, please, we are all family here. There is really no need to make things so incredibly ugly. I shot her a chilling look. From the very moment you let Alex take the head seat at my table, it was already ugly. Right then and there, directly in front of all of them, I coldly shoved every single piece of Alex's trashy belongings into cardboard boxes, labeled them clearly, and had the property management drag them down to the temporary storage room by the main entrance. Isabella stood nearby, openly weeping the entire time. She probably thought her tears would make me feel sorry for her, but honestly, I just felt like my home had finally been scrubbed completely clean. As for Edward's precious little store, that joke barely lasted 2 whole weeks. He had opened up some trendy, overpriced toy collection shop on the 3rd floor of the mall, where the rent was sky high and the foot traffic was a total mirage. When he first started it, he kept bragging, young people are totally upgrading their consumption habits. This trendy spot is absolutely guaranteed to rake in crazy money in the future. But here was the pathetic reality. From the costly renovations down to the display shelves, from his very first batch of stock to the massive mall deposit, I had paid for every single dime of it. Back then, I genuinely didn't even expect him to pay me back. I just figured Isabella only had one brother, and if I was in a position to help my family, I would do it. Looking back on it now, I realize a harsh truth. Most people don't bleed you dry just because they're backed into a corner. No, the truth is, once you bend over backwards to help them, they simply assume your spine was built for them to step all over. The very first time Edward desperately called me was the exact day before his rent was due. Brother-in-law, man, I'm super short on cash right now. Can you just spot me $8,000 first? I swear on my life I'll pay you back next month. I was busy taking room measurements at my studio when I answered the phone, and I only gave him one ice-cold reply. Do not ever call me your brother-in-law again. He totally froze, and then his panic quickly warped into anger. Are you really going to be this totally ruthless to me? My sister hasn't even officially divorced you yet. Yeah, which is exactly why I'm simply cutting off your cash flow instead of suing you for it. He choked on his words, stammering, but you signed the initial contract with me back then. The mall manager knows you too. If you just totally bail on me now, what the hell are people going to think of me? I scoffed. What people think of you is entirely your own problem. With that, I hung up the phone. Later that afternoon, Isabella actually showed up at my studio. She was wearing a simple white dress, her hair falling loosely around her shoulders. She looked way more haggard than she had just a few days ago. In the past, whenever she waltzed into my workspace, it was only to demand a ride, make me fix her mess, or clean up another disaster for her family. But this time, she was actually holding my favorite cup of coffee. Kane, let's talk, she pleaded. I didn't even reach for the coffee. I just led her straight to the conference table and said, divorce? Fine by me. Her eyes instantly dimmed. Do you really have to be so cold when you talk to me now? I didn't even bother answering. She set the coffee down, her voice dropping to a fragile whisper. Edward's store is on the verge of collapsing. You know how my brother is. If it actually goes under, he won't be able to survive it. I just stared blankly at her. And? She bit her lip nervously. Just help him. Just one last time, I promise. Once we sort out all this family drama, I will personally make sure he pays you back. I actually laughed out loud. Isabella physically flinched, completely stung by my cold smile. I know you don't trust me right now, but he is my brother after all. I leaned in. He's your brother, Isabella, not my damn son. All the color drained from her face as I kept going. By the way, I checked the accounts. Out of the $43,000 you swore was for your training program. $22,000 went straight to Alex. Oh, and the remaining $8,000? That magically found its way right into Edward's store payment account. In other words, you weaponized my money. You tricked me into thinking I was supporting your career, but half of it lined Alex's pockets, and the rest bailed out your deadbeat brother. Isabella's tears suddenly began to fall. I wasn't lying to you, she sobbed. I thought you wouldn't mind. I stared dead into her eyes. Of course I wouldn't mind, provided you actually told me the truth. She choked on her sobs. Without breaking eye contact, I slid a freshly printed bank statement right in front of her. Isabella, you aren't soft-hearted. You're just spoiled. You're so used to my money always being at your disposal. So used to me blindly having your back every single time you asked. The only reason a guy like Alex dared to walk all over me is because you gave him the green light. You showed him my money was up for grabs, my car was his to joyride, my home could be invaded, and I could be treated like absolute garbage by your entire family. She shook her head frantically. No, Kane, that's not true. I cut her off instantly. You didn't come here today because you suddenly realized you broke my heart. You only came crawling back because you realized you're out of cash. The meeting room fell deathly silent. Isabella's face turned completely ghost white. She slowly stood up, her entire body shaking as she spoke. Kane, it's been 5 years. Is that really how you see me? I glared back. And what about you? 5 years together. How did you see me? She completely froze. So I answered for her. I was your personal ATM, your chauffeur, your handyman, the ultimate safety net for your family's pathetic debts, and the convenient, spineless husband who would never dare leave you for Alex. She let out a desperate cry. I didn't. I never thought that. I calmly pulled out my phone and opened a saved screenshot of her private chat with Alex. I had dug it up from the synced records on my old tablet. Look at this. Alex asks, "Will Kane be upset?" And you replied, "He will grumble a little bit at most, but he will be totally fine in a few days." You literally wrote, "He is too soft-hearted. He won't ever actually abandon me." I swiped to the next message. Here, Alex says, "I will take his car for a few days, so my clients do not look down on me." And your brilliant reply, "Go right ahead. He will not need it anytime soon." You even added, "Even if he finds out, I will just sweet talk him out of it." Isabella stared blankly at the glowing screen, her tears instantly drying up. She finally realized that no amount of lying could save her now. Her voice was barely a whisper. I just said that casually." I gave a slow nod. "Well, now I am also saying something casually." She looked up at me with wide eyes, and I pointed to the door. "Get the hell out." She trembled from head to toe. In 5 years, that was the very first time I had ever spoken to her with such pure venom. I honestly thought I would feel guilty, but as the words left my mouth, all I felt was intoxicating relief. Shortly after Isabella dragged herself out, my lawyer, James, had his assistant fire off a second legal notice. This one was aimed straight at Edward's throat. It legally demanded that he confirm the exact nature of the rent, the massive renovation costs, and the inventory payments I had fronted for his pathetic shop over the past 3 years. He had exactly 15 days to explain where the money went. If they were legally classified as loans, the ruthless recovery process would begin immediately, and if he dared to claim they were just gifts, he would have to provide signed, written proof of that supposed gift from both of us. Good luck with that. The second that lawyer's letter hit his mailbox, Edward completely lost it, blasting the family group chat. "Kane, are you even a real man? My sister wasted 5 years married to you, and now you are actively trying to drive her own flesh and blood to his death." I didn't even bother typing a reply. I didn't have to. An older uncle, one who had previously tried to talk sense into me, suddenly chimed in. "Borrowing money and paying it back is just basic human decency, Edward. It was a massive favor for your brother-in-law to even help you in the first place, and it is entirely his right to stop." Edward shut up immediately. The tide in the family had officially turned. Before, they mistook my polite silence as proof that I owed the Harper family something. But now that the brutal financial receipts were out in the open, they finally realized the leech was never me. Later that evening, my father-in-law, William, called my phone. His voice sounded completely hollow and exhausted. "Kane." Alex took off. I stood by the glass window, calmly watching the city traffic buzzing below. Where exactly did he run off to? He shut his phone off completely this afternoon. His entire studio is totally empty. A few of his old buddies tracked me down. They told me that the money he borrowed under my name for that flashy birthday banquet wasn't just 26,000. I narrowed my eyes. Then how much was it? William went dead silent for a painfully long time. 113,000. I slowly closed my eyes, letting the sheer magnitude of the scam sink in. William's voice cracked, sounding incredibly hoarse. "I am going to file a police report first thing tomorrow morning. As for Isabella, you just handle her however you need to, son. Do not worry about protecting my feelings anymore." I took a deep breath. "Okay, William, I will." Right after hanging up, my screen lit up with a text from an unknown number. It read, "Kane, do you honestly think you have won this little game? Do not forget, Isabella already signed. If this blows up, he's going down with me." There was no signature on the text, but my gut knew instantly. It was Alex. I snapped a screenshot, fired it off to James, and shot back a chilling 4-word reply. Exactly what I wanted. When the day finally came to file the police report, the sky hung heavy and grey. William marched into the precinct. Even with a cane in hand, the old man kept his back perfectly straight, radiating sheer resolve. Margaret trailed right beside him. Her eyes were puffy and red as she kept muttering, "William, are we really blowing this up? I know Alex messed up, but he's still Isabella's old comrade. What if this drags our little girl down with him? William froze, shot her a deadpan look and growled, "Let him choke on the bed he made." Margaret gasped in shock. "But she's your own flesh and blood." "Exactly, because she's my daughter. I refuse to let her live the rest of her life as a blind fool." Standing near the station doors, hearing that raw truth drop, my respect for the old man skyrocketed. It's rare. Not every parent has the guts to stop coddling their kid when they cross a massive line. Most folks would just wave it off and say, "Hey, we're family, let it slide." Suddenly, Isabella pulled up. She rushed out, her hair totally disheveled and her face completely drained of color. She practically threw herself at William. "Dad, wait! You can't report him to the cops!" William just stared cold. "And why the hell not? Alex already called me. He swore he'd pay it all back. He just needs a little more time." "Oh, really? Then where is he?" Isabella choked on her words. William let out a bitter sneer. "The coward won't even show his face to hand over the cash, and you're still buying his garbage?" Isabella's eyes welled up with tears. "Dad, please. If he actually gets locked up, his entire life is totally ruined." I just stood in the shadows, silently watching the pathetic scene unfold. I had swallowed that exact same excuse way too many times. Clearly, William had reached his limit too. He lowered his voice and asked dangerously, "And what about Kane?" Isabella flinched like she'd been slapped. "You literally drained your joint savings with your husband to fund Alex's lifestyle. You handed over your husband's car. You let him crash in your husband's house. At the birthday banquet, that parasite sat in the VIP seat while Kane was treated like a busboy in the kitchen. You're standing here crying about Alex's life getting ruined? But have you spent a single second worrying about the living hell Kane has endured over these past 5 years?" Isabella finally turned to look at me, absolute devastation washing over her tear-streaked face. "Kane, I know I messed up so badly. Can we please just hold off on the cops? I swear I'll pay everything back. I'll slowly pay it all off." I met her gaze dead on. "With what money, Isabella? How exactly are you going to pay it back?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The training center's funds were already totally drained. Edward's shop was already on the verge of bankruptcy. Margaret brought in zero income, and honestly, William's pension barely kept the lights on. Her own paycheck was barely a drop in the bucket. It wasn't even enough to cover the monthly mortgage, let alone their basic living expenses. She used to think money grew on trees because I was always there playing the ultimate safety net. Now that I walked away, her entire fragile reality was crashing down. Just then, a stern police officer stepped out of the precinct. "Mr. William, do you have all the necessary evidence prepared?" William gave a firm nod. "Yes, officer, I certainly do." I stepped up and handed over the thick dossier I had meticulously compiled. "Here are the bank transfer records, secret audio recordings, vehicle usage logs, and the threatening text messages Alex sent me." Isabella whipped her head around to stare at me. "Wait, threatening text messages?" I casually pulled up the screen and shoved the violent texts right in her face. As her eyes scanned the screen, all the blood vanished from her face. Alex's sinister final threat, "He won't get away either," finally smacked her right across the face like a brutal wake-up call. She murmured in absolute shock, "How? How could he say something like that?" I looked at her with zero pity. He has literally always been exactly like this. The only difference is that before, he was pointing the knife at my back and you just conveniently turned a blind eye. Isabella shook her head wildly in denial, her voice cracking into a pathetic sob. No, I swear I genuinely thought he was just down on his luck. I thought he desperately needed a lifeline. I tuned out her desperate whining. I was done listening to her excuses. Giving the official police statement dragged on for over 2 grueling hours. Honestly, Alex's little extortion scheme wasn't even that complicated. Using the grand excuse of William's birthday banquet, he went around feeding lies that the Harper family needed to manage VIP gift money, cover massive social debts, and supposedly invest in a high-end elderly care rehab project. Using that garbage cover story, he shamelessly conned thousands out of several retired military comrades. because he was practically living at the Harper house and used Isabella as his official guarantor. Those poor old veterans just handed over their life savings without a second thought. A huge chunk of that dirty cash actually passed right through Isabella's personal bank account, which became the ultimate blackmail leverage Alex used to threaten her. Isabella was sobbing so violently during her interrogation that she was practically hyperventilating, crying over and over that she had zero clue Alex was running a massive scam. She kept playing dumb, claiming she thought it was just standard business cash flow. The detective just stared at her and asked, "Then why didn't you use your own personal funds? Why did you consistently drain your joint marital account?" She sat there, totally speechless. Her web of lies was dead. By the time I finally stepped out of the stuffy police precinct, a heavy downpour had started to wash over the city. Isabella chased after me into the cold rain, her voice completely hoarse. "Kane, I swear I never ever meant to hurt you." Gripping the handle of my umbrella, I just stood there, watching the bitter rain smash against the concrete steps. "But you did hurt me. You destroyed us." Torrents of tears mixed with the freezing rain streaming down her pathetic face. "I know words are cheap right now, but please, we have been married for 5 long years. Can you please just give me one last chance? I swear, I am done with Alex forever. I will literally do whatever it takes to pay you back every single cent. Please, please don't divorce me." The hypocrisy was staggering. This was literally the very first time she actually promised to cut Alex off. Not when I caught that parasite smirking in my host seat. Not when I walked in and found him sleeping like a king in our sacred wedding room. Not even when I uncovered that massive 730,000 yuan secret transfer. She only cared now because Alex was finally dragging her down with him. I stared right through her. "If he hadn't threatened to destroy your life today, would you have ever really cut him off?" She instantly froze like a deer in headlights. The dead silence was all the answer I needed. With a bitter sigh, I tilted the umbrella slightly over her trembling shoulders, shielding her from the storm for the very last time. "Isabella, I seriously used to think you just had a soft heart," I muttered, the heavy rain echoing my shattered illusions. She looked up at me, her eyes wide, and I didn't hold back. "But now I finally get it. You aren't soft-hearted. You just never once looked at me and thought I was someone who needed protecting." With those final words, I pulled the umbrella away, turned my back on her, and walked straight into the pouring rain. Right behind me, Isabella's heartbroken, desperate sobs echoed in the storm. I firmly refused to look back. Fast forward to the day we finally hit the Civil Affairs Bureau to end this nightmare, and ironically, the weather was absolutely gorgeous. Isabella showed up exactly 20 minutes late, and surprise, surprise, she wasn't alone. She dragged along some hotshot young lawyer, and of course, Margaret was tagging right along. The exact second I spotted Margaret, I knew this whole thing was going to be a massive headache. As soon as she caught sight of me, her face turned pitch black with anger. "Kane, you are completely ruthless. Just look at how horribly thin Isabella has gotten lately. Don't you feel a single ounce of pity for her?" I completely ignored her screeching and just stared dead straight at Isabella. "Did you actually bring the damn documents?" I asked. Isabella's eyes were completely dead as she whispered, "Yes." Margaret immediately dug her claws into Isabella's arm. "Isabella, honey, do not be scared. He cannot just toss you aside and divorce you however he pleases today. The house, the car, the entire savings account, we are going to fight tooth and nail for every single penny we are legally entitled to." Hearing this nonsense, I casually shot a glance at the rookie lawyer standing behind them. The guy looked incredibly awkward, shifting his weight before giving me a stiff nod. "Mr. Kane, we would like to begin by formally negotiating the division of your assets." Right on cue, James stepped out from behind my shoulder, flashed a razor-sharp smile, and said, "Fine by us." Margaret's smug face completely shattered the second she realized who James was. "You actually brought a lawyer. Who exactly do you think you're guarding against?" James smoothly took the wheel for me. "Oh, just against anyone foolishly trying to claim premarital property as joint marital assets." Margaret's entire face flushed a furious beet red, instantly choking on her own words. Instead of marching right into the Civil Affairs Bureau, we took a detour and sat ourselves down in the mediation room right next door. Their sweaty lawyer decided to speak up first. Miss Harper firmly believes that although the marital residence was legally registered under Mr. Kane's name prior to the marriage, the couple lived together under that roof for 5 whole years, and a solid chunk of the mortgage was paid off during the marriage itself. Therefore, she is demanding appropriate financial compensation. James nodded his head, his expression totally unreadable. Very reasonable. For the joint mortgage repayments made during the marriage, plus the corresponding property appreciation, we will calculate the exact legal compensation due. Margaret had literally just breathed a massive sigh of relief when James ruthlessly whipped out a second stack of documents. However, at the very same time during this marriage, Miss Harper made multiple secret bank transfers to a third party named Alex, completely without Mr. Kane's consent. The preliminary confirmed total sits at a whopping $736,400, a massive portion of which was siphoned straight from their joint marital checking account, and another chunk involved the blatant misappropriation of funds strictly designated by Mr. Kane for specific business purposes. We demand the immediate return of Mr. Kane's corresponding share according to the law, and we are fully prepared to file a lawsuit to violently recover the $22,000 in startup funds meant for the training institution. Isabella's face drained of all color, turning dead pale. The opposing lawyer heavily frowned and whispered at her, "You definitely didn't fully disclose these shady transfers to me before." Isabella just guiltily hung her head. Margaret, sensing the trap closing, grew incredibly frantic. "Hey! That money was generously lent by Isabella to a poor comrade in need, not selfishly blown. What right do you have to demand repayment?" James slowly, unhurriedly turned the page. "Oh, a loan? Then I implore you to provide the official IOU, the detailed repayment plan, and a written explanation of the transfer's exact purpose. If you boldly claim it was a gift, please also provide the legal basis for such a massive gift, especially considering the fun little fact that Alex is currently deeply involved in an active fraud case, meaning the actual nature of these funds desperately needs further police investigation." Margaret's voice became a shrill screech. "You are deliberately bullying us!" I glared right into her soul. "When you happily sucked my bank accounts dry before, you didn't even treat me like a human being." She instantly froze dead in her tracks. Isabella stared up at me, those pathetic crocodile tears starting to well up yet again. "Kane, please, do not be like this," she whimpered. I just cut her off. "Just sign the damn paper." Her pale fingers clenched so tightly they turned white, freezing in place for what felt like an eternity. After a long, agonizing pause, she whispered, "What if I absolutely refuse to agree?" I looked straight through her. "Then I will take this to trial and file for a messy divorce." Genuine pain flickered in her teary eyes. "Are you truly that desperate to completely get rid of me?" I did not give her the satisfaction of an immediate answer. Right outside the stuffy mediation room, a sweet young couple had just arrived. A fresh marriage certificate in hand, the girl was clutching the little red booklet, absolutely beaming with radiant joy. Seeing that innocent smile seriously stung my eyes. 5 years ago, Isabella and I walked out of these exact same doors looking just like that. On that beautiful day, she hooked her warm arm through mine and playfully said, "Mr. Kane, I genuinely look forward to your loving guidance from now on." Back in those golden days, I honestly believed we were going to spend an entire lifetime together. But clearly, a lifetime is just way too long. It's far too long, leaving enough time for a person to slowly and painfully forget that the partner standing right beside them is the only one they should be loyally protecting. I pulled my heavy gaze back into the cold room and bluntly told Isabella, "It is not that I want to get rid of you. It's that you violently shoved me away a long, long time ago." Hot tears streamed down her cheeks. Realizing her fake crying wasn't working anymore, Margaret angrily slammed her fists on the table. "Fine, get your divorce, but the house absolutely has to go to Isabella, and we are taking the car too. What on earth is a vulnerable woman supposed to do after a divorce?" I let out a dark, mocking laugh. Well, doesn't she still have her precious Alex? Margaret's face instantly twisted into something hideous. That single sentence was like a jagged needle, ruthlessly piercing straight through their absolute last shred of remaining dignity. Isabella finally completely broke down into hysterics. Can you please just stop bringing him up? I looked down at her with pure ice. Why the hell can't I? Isn't he your beloved comrade in arms? The one who apparently understands you best, magically needs you the most, and is oh so perfectly innocent? She buried her face in her hands, violently shaking and sobbing uncontrollably. James slid the papers across the table, his tone all business. Miss Harper, I highly suggest you read this over carefully. An uncontested divorce is the only way you walk out of here with your dignity. If we take this to court, every single bank record, voice recording, and piece of security footage is going straight into the public record. Her lawyer sat in stunned silence for a second before whispering desperately to Isabella, look, with the mountain of evidence they have on us, all your chances of keeping the house and the car are practically zero. Fighting this is just going to drag you through the mud. Margaret, her mother, practically spit with rage. Whose side are you even on? The young lawyer shrank back, totally humiliated. Ma'am, I'm literally just telling you the cold, hard facts. Isabella just sat there, staring blankly at the divorce papers while her hands shook like leaves in a hurricane. In the end, she couldn't bring herself to sign it. I need more time, she choked out. I gave a single cold nod. Fine. As I stepped out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, she chased after me, tears in her eyes. Kane, if it weren't for Alex, would we really be standing here right now? I froze. The afternoon sun was beating down on the steps of the bureau, so bright it almost hurt my eyes. I didn't even blink. Yes. She looked like I had just slapped her. I turned to face her and said, slow and sharp, because the problem was never just about Alex. It was always about you. You chose him over and over again. You threw me under the bus time after time and then had the nerve to ask me to just be understanding. If it hadn't been him, it would have been some other guy. All the color completely drained from Isabella's face. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. It was a text from James. The court docs are locked and loaded. If she didn't sign today, we're going to war tomorrow. I texted back one single word. Good. Once the lawsuit actually kicked off, Isabella finally learned the hard way what a real reckoning felt like. She used to live in this fantasy world where married couples could just blur the lines and sweep things under the rug. But in a courtroom, every single dollar had a date attached to it. Every voice clip had a timestamp. Every time that car moved, the GPS tracked it. And every single text message painted a crystal clear picture. She could no longer play the victim and whine, "Oh, we're just old army buddies. Don't get the wrong idea." Or I swear I didn't think it was a big deal. On the very first day of trial, Isabella showed up looking like an absolute wreck dressed down, eyes bloodshot, playing the tragic victim to perfection. Margaret was perched in the gallery, clutching a tissue for dear life, and shot me an icy glare the second I walked in. William, her dad, was there too. He sat way back in the corner, his posture stiff and military straight, but his hair looked like it had aged 10 years overnight. As for Alex, he was a no-show. Turns out, the guy had already been locked up for his own shady dealings and was dealing with his own massive legal nightmare. When the trial actually started, James went straight for the jugular, dropping our mountain of evidence. He played the audio from the birthday disaster, rolled the hotel security tapes, and slapped down high-res photos of Alex casually living in my house. Then came the logs of him coming and going, the stack of traffic tickets he racked up in my car, and the police reports from his accidents. And the grand finale? Hundreds of screenshots of their cozy little texts, paired with the massive bank transfers she sent him. With every piece of paper, Isabella looked closer to passing out. Her lawyer made a pathetic attempt to save face. "Your Honor, my client and Alex are simply old military friends. There is absolutely nothing scandalous going on here. Yes, the money transfers were perhaps a bit reckless, but they were strictly meant to help a veteran in need. This was not some malicious plot to drain marital funds." James just smiled, cool as ice. "Your Honor, who she was sleeping with isn't even our main point today. What we are proving is that Miss Harper, while legally married to my client, systematically siphoned massive amounts of their joint life savings to a completely unrelated third party. And to top it off, this third party lived in my client's home and drove his car for months, causing extreme financial damage. The judge peered over his glasses at Isabella. "Miss Harper, do you deny making these massive financial transfers?" Isabella's voice was barely a squeak. "No, Your Honor." The judge checked his notes. The plaintiff claims these funds were specifically saved for starting a business, paying the mortgage, and covering critical medical bills. "Do you admit to taking that specific money?" Her hands were shaking violently now. I admit to some of it." Up in the gallery, Margaret looked ready to flip a table, but William yanked her back into her seat. Then James pulled up the text messages on the big screen. Alex wrote, "I'm gonna take the car for a few days so the client doesn't look down on me." And Miss Harper replied, "Go ahead. He won't need it anytime soon. Even if he finds out, I'll just smooth things over." You could hear a pin drop in that courtroom. Isabella just stared at her lap, fat tears silently splashing down onto her shaking hands. I only looked at her for a second because honestly, I was terrified of remembering the naive, pathetic version of myself that actually trusted this woman with my life. And I was even more terrified of feeling sorry for that guy. After a quick break, William was called to the stand. Standing up there in the witness box, the old man's voice was quiet, but it echoed. "Kane has been nothing but an absolute godsend to our family. He paid out of pocket for my entire birthday party. He dumped his own money into fixing up our rundown house, and he's the one who stepped up and paid for my hospital bills when I was sick. The day that punk Alex had the nerve to sit at the head of my table, I hit him. I hit him because I watched him publicly humiliate my own son-in-law." The judge leaned in. "Sir, were you aware of the massive loans Alex took out?" William just closed his eyes, looking exhausted. "Not at first. I only found out when the damage was done. He scammed money out of my old military friends using my birthday as a cover story. And he got my own daughter to co-sign the whole thing. I've already filed a police report against him." The judge nodded. "Sir, do you believe the marriage between Mr. Kane and your daughter is officially beyond repair?" William just stood there, dead silent for what felt like an eternity. Isabella snapped her head up, begging him with her eyes, hanging on to one last, desperate shred of hope. William looked down at his daughter, his face twisted in absolute heartbreak. "Yeah," he finally choked out. "It's completely broken." At that moment, the very last drop of life drained right out of Isabella's face. William's voice grew hoarse, cracking with regret. "It's my fault. I didn't raise my daughter right." She had taken her husband's bleeding heart for granted, completely blinded by the cheap flattery of outsiders. "If Kane wants a divorce, I won't stand in his way," he choked out. In the gallery, Margaret just broke down sobbing. Old William didn't even look back. And at that exact moment, Isabella completely shattered. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking violently as she sobbed. But honestly, my heart didn't feel that rush of sweet satisfaction I'd imagined. Instead, I just felt bone-tired, like the dust was finally settling. Right before the trial wrapped up, the judge stepped in to mediate a final settlement. Isabella suddenly shot out of her seat, locking her tear-filled eyes on me. "Kane, I'll pay it all back. I don't want the house, and you can keep the car. I'll even take the fall for whatever I have to in Alex's fraud case. Please, can we just drop the divorce?" The entire courtroom turned to stare at her. Tears streaming down her face, she cried, "I know I messed up. I was so arrogant. I seriously thought you would never, ever leave me. I honestly thought that even if you got mad, a little sweet talk would just fix everything. But now I get it. I swear, I really get it now." Look, if she had said those exact words 6 months ago, my heart might have softened. If she had begged me a month ago, I might have actually hesitated. But now, after laying all that damning evidence on the table, after having my wounds ripped open time and time again, only now do I hear her say she's sorry. I know I was wrong. Man, it was way too late for that. I stood up tall, looking down at her, and said, "Isabella, you didn't realize you were wrong when you lost me. You only realized you were wrong after losing the house, the car, the money, your pride. And Alex, she shook like a leaf in a hurricane. Without missing a beat, I turned my gaze dead center to the judge. I insist on the divorce. Hearing that, Isabella just slumped back into her chair, totally defeated. They didn't hand down the verdict right then and there, but as I walked out of those heavy courthouse doors, I knew my freedom wasn't far off. Suddenly, Margaret rushed over, throwing herself in my path, the high and mighty attitude completely gone. Her voice was actually trembling with a desperate plea. "Kane, please, Auntie didn't mean those awful things I said before. Don't take it to heart. Isabella really knows she messed up. You guys have been together for 5 years. How can you just throw all that away?" I stared down at this woman, the same woman who used to treat me like free labor, a walking ATM, and a total outsider. Finally, she was bowing her head to me. But don't get it twisted. She wasn't bowing out of respect. She was only begging because she finally realized I was actually walking away for good. William marched over and yanked her back. "Let him go," Margaret wailed. "Are you really just going to stand there and watch your only daughter get divorced?" William's eyes went completely red. What else am I supposed to do? Let him keep wasting his damn life on her? Hearing that, I just gave William a silent nod of respect. Right as I turned to leave, he called out, "Kane!" I paused and looked back. This stubborn old man, a guy who valued his pride over absolutely everything, bowed deeply to me right in front of the bustling courthouse. "I am so sorry." A lump instantly formed in my throat. Taking a breath, I softly replied, "Dad, you have absolutely nothing to apologize for." The tears finally spilled from his red eyes. The word "dad" slipped out so naturally, so effortlessly, that hearing it made Isabella bawl even harder in the background. But in my heart, I knew this was the absolute last time I'd ever say it. From today onward, he was just William Harper, not my father-in-law anymore. When the official verdict finally dropped, exactly 3 months had passed since that disastrous birthday banquet. The court officially granted the divorce. The house we bought together? Awarded straight to me. I paid Isabella out for her share of the mortgage payments and property value increase, right down to the very last penny the court calculated. A fancy car? That went to me too, while that scumbag Alex was hit with the full legal liability for all the accident repairs and traffic tickets he'd racked up. And that chunk of our joint marital funds Isabella had sneakily transferred to Alex behind my back, he was legally ordered to cough up my rightful share. As for Alex's criminal case, that was handled separately. The fraud charges and those messy loan disputes were hitting him all at once like a freight train. Edward's shop went completely belly up. And Margaret, she couldn't even show her face around her snobby friends anymore without dying of embarrassment. Isabella was forced to move her pathetic self back into the Harper family home. The whole thing was like a beautifully toppled set of dominoes. Finally, the very last piece had fallen perfectly into place. A few days later, William actually invited me out to dinner. He didn't pick some fancy hotel restaurant, but a run-down little noodle joint on a quiet older street. "Kane, let's just grab a simple bite," he'd said over the phone. "Consider it an old man's formal apology. I showed up not to bury the hatchet or play nice, and definitely not to give anyone a free pass. I went simply because from start to finish, William was the only one who never used his authority as a father to pressure me. The shop was tiny, boasting a faded, yellowing menu pinned to the greasy wall. William ordered 2 steaming bowls of beef noodles, making sure to add a fried egg to mine. "You know, whenever you came over for family dinners, you'd always give your fried egg straight to Isabella," he murmured. "I always saw that." I cracked a faint smile. "Just an old habit," I replied. He shook his head grimly. "A terrible one. I just stayed quiet." When our bowls hit the table, William picked up his chopsticks, but just let them hover without taking a single bite. "Kane, I've handled a lot of tough cases in my lifetime. I've watched countless people make incredibly stupid choices. But when it came to my very own family, I failed miserably." "You did the best you could," I offered quietly. He shook his head hard. "No, I didn't. I smelled something rotting with that Alex kid a long time ago. I even warned Isabella about him, but I just kept telling myself that she's in her 30s, that whatever was happening in her marriage wasn't something I, as her father, had any right to meddle in. And in the end, I just stood by and watched my daughter slide further and further down the wrong path. Reaching into his worn bag, he pulled out a thick envelope and slid it across the table. I frowned, eyeing it suspiciously. "What's this?" "It's not much," he sighed heavily, "just 20,000. The Harper family owes you a massive debt, one I could never repay in 10 lifetimes. This right here, this is everything Margaret and I have scraped together over the years. Please, don't think it's too little." I calmly pushed the thick envelope back across the table. "Just let the court's judgment play out exactly as it's written. I don't want your money." William's eyes instantly filled with red, tears welling up. "Kane, please, just keep it for your retirement." I looked at him and said, "I divorced Isabella to get my life back, not to leave you two with absolutely nothing." He hung his head in heavy shame, remaining dead silent for a long, uncomfortable minute. Suddenly, the little glass wind chime above the noodle shop door jingled sharply. I glanced up, and there stood Isabella. She looked like a ghost. She had dropped a ton of weight, huddled in a baggy grey coat, wearing zero makeup, with eyes that were terribly swollen and red. William frowned deeply at the sight of her. "What on earth are you doing here?" Isabella didn't even glance at her father. Her desperate eyes were locked entirely on me. "Dad told me you'd be here." I slowly put down my chopsticks. She took slow, shaky steps toward our table, her voice dropping to a fragile whisper. "Kane, is it okay if I sit for just a little while?" William opened his mouth to scold her, but I just gave him a firm shake of my head. Once Isabella slumped into the chair, her trembling fingers nervously twisted and clutched at her purse strap. "I read the court's verdict," she started, her voice shaking. "I promise I'll pay back every single cent on time. I've also completely pulled out of the training center, and I'm cashing out whatever shares I can possibly sell." I just stared at her and gave a flat, Her eyes immediately welled up with fresh tears. "Wow, now you won't even say a single actual word to me." I looked right through her. Everything that needed to be said was already said in front of the judge. She dropped her head, forcing a weak, broken smile as the tears finally spilled over her cheeks. "Yesterday, I went back to that little wonton spot we always used to go to," she whispered. "The owner asked me where you were, and it hit me. In these past 5 years, every single place I know has a piece of you in it." I kept my face blank, offering absolutely no response. She sniffled and kept going. "Before all this, I always thought you were just too quiet, completely unromantic, like you just didn't know how to express your feelings." Then there was Alex. He would listen to my venting, shower me with praises, and magically appear the second I felt slightly wronged. I foolishly thought that meant he truly understood me. Her voice violently choked up on the words, but later, the harsh reality set in. He only ever showed up when I wanted cheap, emotional validation. Meanwhile, you were the one quietly solving all the real heavy problems in my life: the crushing mortgage, the endless car loans, paying for my mom's scary surgery, my dad's hospital checkups, funding Edward's new shop, and even the massive startup cash for my training business. I was incredibly stupid and took every single bit of your sacrifice for granted. She looked up at me, her face drenched in regret. "Kane, I was so wrong." The tiny noodle shop fell dead silent. William quickly turned his face away, his eyes red and swollen with deep regret. I looked down at Isabella, and honestly, my heart wasn't completely made of stone. After all, we had actually shared a life under the same roof for 5 long years. There were nights that were genuinely warm and comforting, and there were moments where the love felt absolutely real. But here's the cold, hard truth. A person can never offset months of continuous, agonizing betrayal with just a handful of warm memories. So, I took a breath and said, "I accept your apology." A sudden, hopeful glimmer instantly lit up in Isabella's sad eyes. But in the very next second, I crushed it. "However, I absolutely do not accept getting back together." That little glimmer of hope died out instantly, completely snuffed out. The color completely drained from her trembling lips. "Is there really no chance at all?" she pleaded. "Zero," I replied coldly. She looked as if a boulder had just crushed her chest, frozen entirely stiff in her wooden chair. After what felt like an eternity, she slowly pulled a little velvet box out of her bag. Tucked inside were our old wedding rings. This. I could never ever bring myself to take it off, she cried. I gave the shiny bands a dismissive glance. My own ring had been ripped off my finger the very night of that disastrous birthday banquet. Right now, it was gathering dust in a dark drawer at my studio, nothing more than a piece of expired junk. I looked at her and said, "Keep it or toss it in the trash. That's entirely up to you." She sobbed through her streaming tears. "Kane, how? How can you be so incredibly cruel?" I locked eyes with her. "Isabella, when I decide to be cruel, I simply walk away and leave you alone." My voice dropped, soft but razor sharp. "But when you were cruel, you made me stand right by your side, forcing me to watch as you chose someone else over and over again." A violent shudder racked her entire body, and she finally, thankfully, fell completely silent. I didn't bother finishing my meal. As I was heading out, William silently walked me to the front door. He patted my shoulder and said quietly, "Live a good life from now on, son." I just nodded back. "Make sure you take good care of yourself too, sir." By the time Isabella desperately chased after me, a heavy rain had started pouring outside. She stood out in the freezing downpour, her voice breaking apart. "Kane, please, can we just start all over? I swear on my life, I will never, ever do it again." I calmly popped open my black umbrella and just looked down at her pathetic state. Exactly 3 months ago, right outside the police station doors, I had shielded her from the rain for the very last time, though deep down, I already knew we were completely dead. This time, I didn't even offer her an inch of my umbrella. "Isabella, starting over doesn't mean we just magically wipe away all the ugly old debts." I finally turned my back on her. "It means I get to start completely fresh without you." The afternoon I finally held that official divorce certificate in my hands, I didn't post a single thing on social media, nor did I throw a wild celebration party. I simply packed up the very last of Isabella's stray belongings from our old marital home, tossing them in a box, and shipped them straight back to the Harper family house via a same-day courier service. After that, I drove straight back to my personal studio in the quiet part of the old town. It's a modest, cozy 2-story brick building. The entire first floor serves as a sleek material showroom, while the second floor acts as my private office and a temporary, peaceful living space. Isabella always used to loudly complain that this place was way too dusty and lacked any real romantic ambience, so I rarely ever brought her around. Now I find the absolute silence incredibly peaceful. Just outside my main window are giant, leafy plane trees, and from the street downstairs you can hear the occasional, cheerful ring of a passing electric bike's bell. When the evening hits, the golden sunset spills beautifully across the hardwood floor, casting a warm, fresh light over all my old things. I reached up, tore down the dusty old blueprints from the wall, and pinned up a set of brand new, exciting project plans. My new life was officially starting anew. It really wasn't quite as loud or dramatic as I had originally imagined. The best part is simply that I no longer have to wake up and cautiously read Isabella's moody facial expressions every single morning, nor do I have to constantly stress out, worrying about my greedy ex-mother-in-law suddenly calling my phone out of nowhere to demand for more money, blindly cover Edward's endless shop expenses, or sit up late at night, agonizing as my wife feeds me another lie about why she just had to go see Alex again. It turns out that true peace isn't about having it all. It's about finally cutting off the dead weight that's been draining you dry. Alex's little charade finally caught up with him. He had been bleeding the Harper family's old military buddies dry under every excuse in the book, scamming them out of over $150,000. Half of it was for entirely made-up emergencies, just a desperate cover-up for his mountain of hidden debts. The cops slapped him with criminal charges, and civil lawsuits immediately piled on to bleed him right back. Word is, once he got locked up, he instantly threw Isabella under the bus. He swore she just handed the money over voluntarily and that he was merely borrowing it. Thanks to him, Isabella was dragged into the precinct over and over again for grueling interrogations just to clear her name. The golden boy she sacrificed our marriage to protect ended up using her as a human shield. Honestly, I wasn't even surprised. His true colors had already bled through at that disastrous birthday banquet. Meanwhile, Edward's little shop went belly up, liquidating his precious stock for pennies on the dollar. At first, Margaret tried her usual crying act on the veterans, sobbing about how cruel and heartless I was for completely destroying the Harper family. But the old squad wasn't buying her tears anymore. One of them just snapped. Do you have any idea how much money your family leached off of Cain all these years? Are you totally blind? Another chimed in. Give it a rest, Margaret. You drove away the best son-in-law you could have ever asked for. Margaret has kept her mouth tightly shut ever since. William actually called me twice once to give me the lowdown on Alex's trial, and again just to ask how to calibrate that blood pressure monitor I bought him a while back. Neither of us breathed a single word about Isabella. He's a decent guy who actually knows what boundaries are. About a month after the divorce papers were signed, Isabella showed up. I had just crawled back from a site, still caked in dirt and grime. There she was, standing awkwardly in the doorway of my studio, clutching a thermos like it was a lifeline. For a split second, it felt like I'd been hit by a ghost from the past, ripping me right back to our honeymoon phase. She used to show up to fetch me from work, whining about the dust but waiting faithfully at the door anyway. But now, that arrogant pride in her eyes was completely dead, replaced by this pathetic, walking on eggshells caution. I made soup, she murmured softly. I remember your stomach used to be weak. I just stared blankly at that stupid thermos. The worst, most agonizing stomach flare-up I ever had in 5 long years of marriage hit me at exactly 2 o'clock in the morning. Isabella got a frantic call from Alex, whining that he was drunk and lost. She literally tossed me a cold. Just take some pills yourself, and snatched up her car keys without a second glance. I dragged my own half-dead body to the ER that night. She strolled back in at dawn, sighing Alex almost got into real trouble. I had absolutely no choice. And now suddenly she remembers my fragile stomach. But I don't need her anymore. Take it back, I told her, my voice ice cold. Her eyes instantly welled up with tears. I didn't mean anything by it. I really just wanted to see you. Well, you've seen me, I replied without a shred of emotion. Isabella, don't ever come here again. We are divorced. She let out a choked sob. I know, but I just can't shake this feeling that we shouldn't have ended up like this. I looked her dead in the eye. We didn't just crash and burn overnight. It was every single time you told me to be the bigger person, every time you forced me to just suck it up, every time you chose Alex over your own husband. Step by painful step, you dragged us right here. She broke down sobbing. I only see that now. I just nodded. Then engrave it in your memory. A pathetic, desperate glimmer of hope flashed in her eyes, because from this day forward, we walk entirely different paths. This time, I completely slammed the door on any chance of crawling back. She stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, slowly setting the thermos down by the door before finally turning her back and walking away. I didn't touch it. Half an hour later, the cleaning lady popped her head in. Mr. Cain, whose soup is this out here? Want me to bring it inside? I didn't even look up. No, do me a favor and throw it straight in the trash. She hesitated for a second, but knew better than to pry. As the rich soup splashed down the drain, a faint nostalgic scent drifted through the room. I just lowered my head and went right back to fixing my blueprints. There wasn't a single drop of pain left in my chest, just the overwhelming relief of scraping off the last bit of a rotten chapter. Fast forward 6 months, I took on a fresh renovation gig for a vintage street homestay. It wasn't a massive corporate job by any means, but it had incredible character. The clients were a sweet, retired couple, hoping to flip their old ancestral estate into a cozy courtyard bed and breakfast for their daughter to run. On my very first walkthrough, I spotted a massive, ancient osmanthus tree anchoring the courtyard. The old lady patted its trunk and smiled. This old thing has been here longer than I have. Please, whatever you do, don't chop it down. I smiled back gently. I wouldn't dream of it. Old doesn't mean useless. The only thing that matters is if the roots have rotted out. The moment the words left my mouth, they hit me like a ton of bricks. We finalized the blueprints shortly after that. I preserved the osmanthus tree and built a stunning open-air tea lounge circling right around it. When the grand reveal finally happened, the old woman gripped my hands, practically glowing. It's like this whole courtyard has breathed its first breath of life again. Standing beneath those sprawling branches, watching the golden afternoon sun filter through the leaves, it suddenly dawned on me that human lives work exactly the same way. Some old things just need a little mending. But the rotten ones? You just have to tear them out by the roots. Isabella made her very last cameo in my life through a screenshot of her social media, sent over by a mutual friend. She had posted a bleak picture of the courthouse entrance, captioned with a single, pathetic line: "You never truly understand someone's worth until they're gone." What he gave wasn't just a piece of his heart. It was his entire world. Someone in the comments asked if she regretted it all. Her reply was just 2 words: "I do." I read it once, deleted the picture, and moved on with my life without saying a damn word. Let him choke on his regret. My only job now is never looking back. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from William. Isabella is packing up and fleeing down south for a fresh start. And Alex, well, he wants you to know he's deeply sorry. I just typed back, "Wish him well." A second later, William's next message popped up, "And I wish you the absolute best too, Kane." I stared blankly at the glowing screen before hitting send on 2 simple words: "Thank you." Outside, the city was dead quiet, but my studio was warmly lit. A massive new project contract sat right on my desk, right next to a steaming cup of freshly brewed tea. No more screaming matches, no more toxic accusations, and definitely no more frantic, late-night phone calls begging me to clean up their disastrous messes. I finally had my hard-earned peace back. Look, everyone thinks revenge has to be this flashy, explosive event that you have to make your enemies drop to their knees and sob, repaying every ounce of pain 100 times over. But honestly, the most absolutely ruthless revenge you can get is when you realize you just don't need him anymore, when you stop waiting around for his pathetic excuses, stop praying he'll magically change his ways, and stop throwing yourself back into the roaring fire just because he whispered, "I was wrong." Let's rewind to the night of the General's grand birthday banquet. Alex proudly stole the seat of honor while I quietly carried my empty bowl straight to the kitchen. Every single person in that room thought I had lost the game. But what they didn't know, the second I set that bowl down, I had already permanently walked away from their toxic table. The aftermath? The seat of honor went right back to the General. I took back my car, I reclaimed my house, and I squeezed back every single dime of my money that I could possibly recover. As for Isabella, I let her keep her own miserable self. And as for me, Kane Miller, from that exact moment forward, I belonged to absolutely no one but myself.